And American internet companies have received a lot of grief for giving in to the government's secret warrantless demands to hand over user data in the name of national security. But details are now emerging over the type of pressure the government has used to get that information. Documents recently declassified yesterday by U.S. intelligence services now reveal that U.S. authorities threatened to fine Yahoo $250,000 a day back in 2008 if it didn't hand over their user data. Now, this came after the company had challenged the government's data demands in 2007, calling them unconstitutional and an overboard surveillance. Yahoo did ultimately comply with that request, dodging the fine, and that made it one of the first companies to begin providing information to PRISM, a program revealed last summer by whistleblower Edward Snowden that gave the NSA access to millions of online communications of foreign and American citizens alike. To discuss the legality of the NSA approach, I was earlier joined by Derek Khanna, a surveillance consultant and a fellow at Yale Law. I first asked Derek how significant the declassification of these FISA court proceedings with Yahoo were.
It's a big deal. It's a large number of pages. I mean, experts are still going through the filings, parsing through it. But this is really one of the first releases ever by the FISA court. We have a few documents from Edward Snowden on previous rulings, but the court has very rarely released information on its own.
Now, why do you think they're releasing this one in particular?
Well, Yahoo was had to litigate to release this for several years of litigation, and they really didn't have a ground to stand on why this information shouldn't be released to the public, particularly now that the public is aware of the existence of a program named PRISM.
And now, in the release of these documents, the director of the NSA says the court justified its demands against Yahoo, quote, saying there's a foreign intelligence exception to the warrant requirement, and that the U.S. government has sufficient procedures in place to ensure that Fourth Amendment rights of targeted U.S. persons are adequately protected. And from what we've learned since these Snowden leaks began, do you believe that the government's argument, their justification, do you think that's legal?
I don't think it's legal. And we had a similar program, although it shouldn't be confused. There are some differences involving Verizon records of consumers that was already struck down by a very influential judge, Judge Leon, and he said he couldn't imagine anything potentially more Orwellian. He says this is almost Orwellian in nature. And the PRISM program is very similar. Now, we don't have a court necessarily striking it down in that manner, but we're talking about a large amount of data, emails, phone calls, Skype sessions of potentially American consumers, because their rule was, you had to be 51% sure that it was a foreigner. Well, that leaves 51% sure it's a foreigner. And that leaves, of course, a lot of Americans in the net. And also we know from the Snowden disclosures that, one analyst who accidentally got Americans' information was told, oh, don't worry about it. So a system with very little accountability that really is searching a broad net for 51% foreigners, of course, is going to involve a large amount of American information.
51% accuracy is probably more like it, right? Now, do we know if there are other companies that have faced similar fines for not handing over stuff to the NSA?
We don't know about that. We do know that there have been some other companies who have pushed back, such as Microsoft. But we don't know of any other companies that have been threatened in this way of a $250,000 daily fine, which even the government acknowledged the purpose was to be coercive.
Right.
And Yahoo was asking, we would like to litigate this to a higher court. We would like a stay on your ruling. We don't want to have to turn over all of our consumer data while the court is adjudicating this matter. And that was what the fine was. The fine was, no, you have to turn over all the information right now, and you can appeal it later.
Now, is it lawful for the government to threaten such fines against these these companies that wish to sue them, private or public? Is it lawful for them to do that, to kind of bully people like that?
Well, generally it is lawful if the underlying order is lawful. If we had a more clear-cut case and it was a traditional warrant and a company was just denying the warrant, then that would be a clear situation where such a coercive fine could be prudent. But the issue here is that the underlying question of whether or not the FISA court's PRISM system itself was constitutional had never been adjudicated, and Yahoo had very legitimate questions on behalf of its consumers.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Microsoft. A few years back, Microsoft tried to push back as well over these very similar government demands for their user data, and they got slapped again with threats of exorbitant fines as well. But the Microsoft incident happened before Yahoo. Do you think because they caved in, and they completely caved, do you think they set precedents for other companies such as Yahoo and others to follow, to just cave for, not setting a good example to fight back, right?
Well, I'm not sure it's accurate to say that they caved. I mean, Microsoft has been pretty outspoken on this matter to the extent that they can be. Again, there are very strict requirements. They can't bring this stuff public. Yahoo fought for years and years and years just to be able to talk about this fine. And so there's pretty significant limitations on what they're actually allowed to do.
Okay, and now, if we're seeing tech giants such as Microsoft and Yahoo being largely unsuccessful against securing the privacy rights of their users, what does this do to smaller startup tech companies? I mean, are they going to have to put somewhere in their user agreements, their terms of agreement, to forewarn their users that their data might be made privy to the NSA, or what can they do?
Well, we're seeing some companies like Google and also Yahoo go to the extra length to secure their data by ensuring it's encrypted end-to-end. So that way it's almost impossible for the government to tap into that data. We're also seeing these companies lobby for better laws that would protect American citizens. And we're also seeing some startups pop up that are creating systems where they have no ability to turn over the information to the government. But it's a real issue for innovation because a lot of these companies, they're having difficulty competing abroad where Europeans know that that information is going to be turned over to the federal government.
Well, this is actually going to stifle a lot of American companies, it sounds like. All right, thanks so much. That was Derek Khanna, fellow at Yale School of Law.